Good.
This is the shackle.
Yeah.
This is where it ends. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Bring it all. As big as it gets.
This is
that.
It's a big, big place. Asher nosen hamelach leYehudim asher b'chol ir ve'ir lehikoil v'lamed al nafsham. Lehikoil v'lamed al nafsham. It means that Hamelach, that the Bari Olam, the Bari Shalom, has been megala to us that these last few minutes before Mashiach comes, we have no Eitzah except Lehikoil v'lamed al nafsham. Lehikoil v'lamed al nafsham, in order that a Yid should be able to be oimed al nafshay, to have a shaykhis to who he is, Memela, to have a shaykhis to the Bari Olam. There's no choice anymore. We have to be in such a malacha of lihikohel v'lamed al nafshim, to join together as a chever, as a chabura, as a kehila. The Bnei Yisrael writes in Agud Kala in Parshas Eikev, Hine liyos b'soif yomaya, liyos b'soif yomaya, that now that we are at the end of days, we are b'soif yomaya, and the neshamas hem k'tanei ha'erech. The neshamas at the end of time, or the neshamas like the Tanya tells us from the Eikev at the end, and the neshamas like k'tanei ha'erech are of lower value. The tzrichim ha'oid l'stayeh zemizeh. The tzrichim ha'oid l'stayeh zemizeh. We need very much to help one another. Can't do it by ourselves anymore. It's not shaykh for a person to do it by himself. Lahashlim tikunai. To be mashlim is tikkun. Alkein mama itzrichim l'zoyer b'dayis halolu b'ahavas chaverim makshiva. So Bnei Yisrael says how careful we have to be in these last generations at the end of time. This nakuda of Ahavas Chaverim Makshivim is, I understand from a distance, not that far, but from a little bit of a distance, I understand. But that's what the Olam is working on over here. Ahavas Chaverim Makshivim. Lihikohel v'lamed anafshem. To come together, to, in certain ways, ignore some of the conventions of our past, and to realize, to open our eyes, that these last few minutes we have no choice. Lihikohel v'lamed al nafshem. Ahavas Chaverim Makshivim. So I feel that even though I've only met a few of you, with some of the chaver here today, of course from home, but sometimes it takes you a long time to become an old friend, but sometimes you can become an old friend right away. It doesn't take long to be an old friend. Ahavas Chaverim Makshivim, the love of Jews who are makshivim, who are trying to listen. We're trying to listen and to grow and to change. So I've already mentioned a few things that would be kedai to talk about. I realized that I can't, encompass all of them. I'd like to touch upon one important nakuda, which I think is kailal a number of the things that are barely mentioned. It's a moridike gilui from the Soid Yishar, from the Rebbe of Geshen Henech from Radzin, Schusig Elena. Geshen Henech said that Purim is a loshon of pirurim. These are pirurim, crumbs. Purim is a loshon of pirurim, crumbs. And he has a mahalach in his way. But I want to talk about it l'fi inyanenu. What is the meaning of Purim as a loshon of pirurim, of crumbs? There's a mice that I've told over a few times in the Beis Medrash. The first time I remember saying this over was actually by my children's Sheva Brachos. So it must be 10, 11 years ago. It's a mice of the Baal Shem HaKadosh that fits very much for a night like tonight. It's cold. It's very cold. Everybody here knows that the Baal Shem HaKadosh used to take some unusual trips. Stories of Kvitz Tzaderach and so on. But the ikka is that each time he would go on a certain trip, the Baal Shem HaKadosh would go to the Beis Medrash and he would say, you, come with me. The Baal Shem knew that there were particular Yidden Tzaddikim from the Chavraya that needed to hear something or see something, davke. And he would take them and they would go, and they never asked where they were going. And the driver also didn't know where he was going. Yadu. So it once happened that the Baal Shem HaKadosh went on a freezing cold winter night. And he brought some of the Chav, and they went on a sled. Everything was snow and ice. And they went outside some place not far from Ashbridge. They went, and it was a big lake. And the lake was frozen solid. And there were hundreds and hundreds of goyim. They were ice skating. They were skating on the ice. And of course you understand that they didn't want the Baal Shem HaKadosh to go over there. They didn't want to go there themselves. They wanted to go around. The Baal Shem was interested in something that was happening there by this skating rink, by the big skating rink by the lake. Now, it used to be that there was a custom, and my father's August said he remembers such a thing from the Haim, that when it was time for their holiday, by the Goyish holidays, so they had an Indian to go skating, and they would go and they would etch into the ice, they would carve into the ice that Salem, the Avodah Zarahs, they would etch into the ice the shape of the Avodah Zarah. And this is a big Indian by them. But of course this is no place not for a Jew, and certainly not for the Baal Shem HaKadosh. And the Baal Shem insisted that I want to go, there's something going on over there, and I want to go over there. And the Chassidim just says, Rabbi, it's not a good place over there. Baal Shem said, I want to go. And they came, and even the Goyim were in this spell that the Baal Shem came to such a thing. And everybody moved over. And the Baal Shem, for 1 second, was watching. And he put his eyes down. And he was very misragish. He was very excited by this whole thing. And then he said it's time to go back, and they went into the sled, and they turned back to Meshbuz, and they went home. When they got there, when they got back to the Beis Medrash, nobody understood what happened. But obviously that was the whole reason for the trip, was to go to this place. And to see Tzlomim, Salem, in the ice. So Baal Shem HaKadosh says, I know that you're wondering what this was today, why we went. And listen to what he said. Baal Shem said that in this world, there's nothing that gives life as much as water. Water is the source of everything that we have in this world is water. We can't live without water. And water is gewaldig. All that we eat and that we drink, and our entire chiyus comes from water. See? Even without the fish, I'm okay. Sure. Everything we have comes from water. That's only if the water is alive, if it's moving, if it has warmth to it. But if the water becomes frozen, then it's just a matter of time until somebody's able to go into making of a Zara at Salem in the water and the ice. Well, Hashem said that when we were children, we had such a warm relationship with the Bari Olam, so warm, and had a chiyus and was alive. You have parents that when they have a child, remember times that the children of Hashem have grown up, married. But there were hard days when they were little. Sometimes you say a strong word, and then you go and you see the child is sleeping. You sit down next to the child, and your heart is broken because you remember that on the day that the child was born, and the baby was such a chiyus, and you were so happy, and now you find that sometimes you're too critical, you're too hard. Something has come, some ice, some coldness has crept into the relationship with the children. Same thing with other relationships, Chas and Kala, under the chuppah, then time goes by, ice becomes ice. So the Hashem said that once something freezes and becomes ice, then there's no telling what could happen. It's just a matter of time till there's going to already be from that iciness and that coldness that could already be at Salem. It could come out already from that, the terrible, terrible of a desire. Everybody here knows that in this farm, not only is there a Gehenim Shel Eish, whatever that means, a Gehenim of fire, the Sfarim tell us there's also such thing as a Gehenim Shel Sheli, a Gehenim of snow, a Gehenim of Sheli. We're in the sugya now of Ashakarcha Baderach. Ashakarcha Baderach means the coldness of Amalek. Ashakarcha Baderach means that there's a klipa, there's a tumah in the world. It's called a klipa, a tumah of ice, a shelig of snow, of coldness. And that klipa has the ability to take away from us all of our simchas achayim. I just davened Marav in a beautiful Besamedrish in the neighborhood, and then I was looking around at the sweet faces when we were starting the sweet faces of some of our brothers. And believe me, we could have just as easily been saying Neila as saying Marav. Could have just as easily been a Yakum Porkin as it was a Marav Aruvim. It wasn't that much of an afkim. And if you would have given a knock to the guy and said, Rabbi Yid, today you have to say Akdamas. He said, you could open up the Akdamas also. There's a klipa that has a way of Ashakarcha, of Amalek, of taking away all the simchas achayim. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave us a bracha to have children. Not everybody is zocheh to have children. I deal with many, many couples that are waiting and davening for many years, and they go for the brachas, and they go to Eretz Yisrael, and they don't have such a bracha to children. You can wait many, many years to have children, and then once you have children, then something happens. Over the years, there's a coldness, there's an ice. I talk to children every day, teenagers, that they tell me, my parents don't understand me, they're no shaykhs to me. No shaykhs to me. I do everything they tell me, I try to be a good boy, I do what I'm told. There's no shaykhs. A husband and a wife, no shaykhs. Yeah, and at the same address, and they're married, they have a ksuba. But in terms of the simcha, leibedekait, being alive in a relationship, somehow Amalek over the years, the Gehenim Shel Shelig, the Ashakarch, Amalek somehow infiltrated, crept into their lives. And the very same relationship, a parent and a child, that's supposed to give us so much simcha, a husband and wife, very simcha isha sha'av, and higher than anything, ourselves with the Rebbeinu Shalom, becomes cold, loses its warmth. And we try to go through the drudgery of a day-by-day existence. Remember, I was once sitting in the Shtiblach in Yerushalayim. It was around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, a regular, like a Tuesday in Davis or something. There was an Alter Yid over there, and closed the city, he gave a kiss, and he says, Shain, Nacham Arav, Puta, Nacham Arav. Your whole life can become like that. You could turn around and you're 120, it's Puta. What was it? Ice. The Gehenim Shel Shelik. Everybody talks nowadays about the Gehenim Shel Eish, with all the Kelim and Kelim Shainim, and all of the Taivas and so on. There is such a thing. But the only reason that the Gehenim Shel Eish has any impact on our lives and pulls us is because we're stuck in a Gehenim Shel Shelik. The davening is cold. Parents, children, husbands, wives, teachers, rebbeim, and the talmidim, ashakarcha badarach. The shaila is, what is the weapon? What is the weapon of this klipa of Amalek of Ashakarcha? How does it accomplish this? How does it do this? How does it have such an effect upon us? To take a Jew who's naturally b'teva, warm and caring and loving, and that somehow this person becomes cold. So it's a Gemara in Megillah. In Gimel and Beis, the Gemara says, I'm not saying any chedushim, everybody knows all of this. You just have to chavei makshiv. Ahavas chavei makshiv. The Gemara says, Amar Reish Lakish, Golu v'yadu lifnei misha omer v'haya ha'olam she'asid haman lishkol shkolem ha'yisrael. Golu v'yadu, the Rebbeinu Shalom knew in advance that in the future there was going to be a Haman who was going to take a huge fortune of shkolem, and like our enemies have done over the years, including not such a long time ago, to buy Jews, to take shkolem, lishkol shkolem Yisrael, lefichach higdim shkalein lishkolem. Therefore, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave the mitzvah of machzah shekel to preempt, to somehow offset the shkolem of Haman. That's what it says in the Gemara. So the mitzvah of machzah shekel, which we have a zeichel machzah shekel, the mitzvah of machzah shekel, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us to somehow prevent the shkolem of Haman from creeping into our lives. That means the Gemara is telling us that the milchama, the war that's taking place between the malchus of krirus, of coldness, the malchus of Amalek, the malchus of atzvus, of sadness and atzlus and laziness, all of this comes from the ashakarcha, atzvus and atzlus and marashchayra. All of that comes from Amalek, from this Gehenim Shel Shelik. That the milchama between this malchus of ashakarcha, of krirus, and the malchus of chamimus, of warmth, the malchus of simcha, the malchus of Yisrael, that somehow that this milchama is a milchama between the shkolem of Haman and the machzah shekel of Klal Yisrael. The shkolem of Haman versus the machzah shekel of Klal Yisrael. Aviyid. Haman comes with aseres Allah from kika zaha, kika kesef, shkolem, a big amount of shkolem, a very, very powerful weapon, and that the Eibishter gave us something called a machzah shackle, and that this machzah shackle can somehow overcome and overpower and override the koyach of the shkalim, of all of the shkalim of Amalek of Haman HaRasha. So what does this mean? L'maisa, tachlis, what does this mean? Says in Sfarim, Sefer Musa, Chassidus, that we know from ourselves that it's the nature of a person to be nespoiled from something very, very, very big. To be nespoiled from something very big. Meaning, when you walk into when you don't walk into a basement, you said, this is all. See, people have a teva to be nespoiled from something that's big and that's beautiful. Not only in Gashmias, but when it comes to Rachnias also. It became now a very, very big thing, let's say. It's a good thing to make siyumim and mesechtes. The island that's doing Daf Yomi, every couple of weeks, Zoicha, it's a bigger mesechtes, a small mesechtes, Zoicha to make a siyum. My father's always on side and says, he said, I don't remember so many siyumim in Ungvar. He comes from Ungvar. I don't remember that we made so many siyumim in Ungvar. I remember that my father finished Shas 4 or 5 times, but I don't remember that we had such parties like this. I took him to the stadium in August. Oh, everybody here made a siyum. I said, no, not everybody made a siyum over here. But there are a lot of people that made a siyum here. He said, we didn't make such parties. Sometimes maybe a little bit. Somebody made a l'chaim, made a siyum. It wasn't such a thing like now. The smaller the person, the greater the need for something big. Big. Everything in America is big. When there's a Rebbe Shachasna, you can go on the streets, it goes on with the signs and with the torches and with the lights and with the who knows what's going on over here. You'd think that we're in Yerushalayim, already Mashiach has already come. It's a nice thing. I'm not Chalil saying it's not a chashuv azah. Big, big, big. When it comes to giving tzedakos, do I have to tell you what's going on? It used to be that tzedakah was itself a tzniizdik azah. Now the way they have these signs and they take these phony pictures of tzaddikim and they put these pictures together, because now you can't believe pictures anymore, as you know, with the cameras. Doesn't mean anything. You could make one chasna and take pictures, and you don't have to take it any other chasna. You could just put in. You could put in the mechatonim like this and like that, and you could take them out also. It's very easy, the pictures. Everything is phony. Nothing means anything anymore. So now they make tzedakahs like this also. It used to be that somebody was giving tzedakah. He gave tzedakah. Now you have these moisdes that they put out these glossy, fancy booklets and pamphlets, and they plaster it over every newspaper and every wall. And they put up these lashonis ki'ilu that tzaddikim are saying that this is the tzedakah. If you want to have points in Shemaim, and they even say things like this, and then they show also phony pictures they take, and they have tzaddikim ki'ilu they're davening for you by Rabbi Moshe Weinberger for 40 days. I'd like to see what's going on over there 40 days by Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. They're davening for you 40 days. They're making their who knows what's going on by the Koisel by Rabbi Moshe Weinberger. And they found even new things. Sometimes it's a slow season, so they have to find some new scholars or some new things they found already. They put in newspapers. I see recently they came from the Tzaddik of Chaim Palachi. They made also in the newspapers they have a picture of a painting of Chaim Palachi. There's a big Tzaddik, a Kodesh Alim. But they make a picture that if you do this and you do this, and of course don't forget to send your check to this address, and we also have a credit card. This is the tzedakah of Klal Yisrael, and they even say things like this. That if you want to be Mekayim the mitzvah matanas lev yoinim, it used to be, you remember? You Mekayim the mitzvah matanas lev yoinim. There's unfortunately, Kol Zman, Mashiach hasn't come. We have still such a thing as lev yoinim, and you see a poor person, and you help a poor person, or you give an tzniizdik away. You give. There are only certain matanas of yoinim that you in Shemaim they tell you that these are the matanas of yoinim they're going to, and it's a hotline, 24 hours. Call now, 24-hour hotline.
I'm the only one that saw these advertisements. 24-hour, and I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying, God forbid, that they're doing something dishonest. Khalil, I'm not saying it's dishonest. It's not dishonest. It's disgusting. It might be honest, but it's disgusting. Everything became like this. They want to make you feel like a pig. It's a big worldwide project or something, and that this is going to save the whole world, and that a person gets excited about it. Because we're so small that we're only on this spell from big things. Something that's big, something that looks like it's exciting. You could live on the block, and on the block that you're living on, there could be Chalila, there could be children on your own block that they're dying. Hashem Yerachem. I don't mean from physical sickness, Chalila. They could be dying. But if somebody announces that there's a child that's missing, which is a mitzvah, then every Yid in America is going to come with their flashlights and with their machines. And they're going to go they'll climb every mountain. And someone will tell you, Yid, you ever take a look at your own kid? He's been dying for the last 16 years. Why don't you talk to him once in a while? Because then you don't have, it's not with flashlights, not with all kinds of special hats and everything. Your child is 16 years old. When was the last time you had a shmuz with him? Heart-to-heart talk. Really. When is the last time that he felt that he had you 1,000%? Not that he was competing with some machine kid. That every time he's talking to you, you go like this to him. I know. When was the last time you had a talk with your kid? If you're going to go rescue all the kids in the world, or you're going to rescue this kid, something's wrong. But that's the teva of a person. When it comes to tikkun midas, so a person knows that there's a certain midah that's not a good midah, and he wants to be masak in this midah. I remember once when I was in yeshiva, there was a guy that you couldn't talk to him. You said good morning to him. He says it's a chash lashon hara. He was walking all the time with shmiyas lashon yacham. Anything you said to him, so people stopped talking to him. Because whatever you said to the guy, he's like, I'm not sure. It could be a havak, it could be the rice, the rabbanim. So he said, you know what? I'm not going to talk to you anymore. that was El's man. The day after there was a Ben Azmani. The guy comes back and was sitting at lunch, and he says, across the rice lashon hara l'choladeis. He said, so everybody just looked at him. This was Mr. Chafetz Chaim, you understand? So everybody looked at him. He said, and he understood that it was strange what he said. He said about one of the rebellion, like a lashon hara. So everybody looked at him. He looked at us and he said, no, that was the last man I was working on lashon hara. I'm working this man on Kas. That was not. That was the last man was lashon hara. But it's a big project, and then if you're working on that, you go right away. I remember when they started Daf Yomi, how it's the best business for art school, right? When it comes to brachas, this lady was telling me from the shul that she's been begging her husband to learn all the years. Learn more. Doesn't have time. He got all excited about to see him. He got excited. He wanted to see him Shas. He got all excited, and he put in an order for the whole art scroll Shas in English. That's a lot of money. So she said to him, why don't you just buy brachas? Start with brachas. Let's see how it goes. He said, no. I'm going to, for the whole Shas he buys, it comes like in a truck. The art scroll comes with it. He's going to learn the whole Shas. She says, try brachas. So he got, I asked him last time he was like 10 blatt into Shabbos. He says, falling behind a little bit. I said, not even by Erevin? Usually they fall away by Erevin. Shabbos, most of the oilam is managing. He says, no, I'm going to catch up. And it's like 60, 70 blatt. He says, I'm going to catch up. It's been very, very busy. I'm going to catch up. And he's going to catch up. He could have bought, instead of wallpaper, they make art school wallpaper. You don't have to spend so much money. They just print it on the wall. And you can make it or paint it on the wall, the art school. But what? It's big. It's a big project. It's a big undertaking. And a person's, the netiyas and effort is to do something big. That's the nature of a person. But when it comes to something which is regular, Rabbi Yisai, just a regular shachris, a regular minchemar, a regular ben obn chaveiroi, how you doing, how's the family, to give a little bit of a smile to a person who's not feeling so good. When it comes to the little things in life, I did this Shabbos. I did a very nice thing. I have two of my youngest. They're still in the house, 2 girls, and I decided I'm going to teach benching together with them. Never did. And I said, we're going to do something this Shabbos. And I said, Hazana Sa'olam. I said, girls, what does it mean, Hazana Sa'olam? The smart girl. She says, son, I start the phone for this. First one says, it's a machlaikis. I said, oh, what does it mean? What does it mean? Don't do machlaikis. What does it mean? Has on the side. What does it mean? Chayin, chesed, rach. What's the difference between chayin and chesed, rach? What does it mean? Just a regular benching. A regular nice benching. We've been doing it our whole lives. We do it in our sleep. So that, they don't put big pictures on the wall, you understand? You don't have to, for that, you don't get any rewards, you don't see that they're giving out any special things. And I said to the girls, you know what, I'll tell you something else. A regular good benching that we should understand, let's just talk about teaching benching, and to try to talk about benching. Nothing fancy, just understand what it means, benching. And to try to think about what we're saying. Just to think about what we're saying. And I said, I'll tell you something else. It wouldn't be a bad idea every day to call your grandparents. What's a bad idea to call your grandparents? For 1 minute, call your grandmother. For 1 minute, call your Bobby. For 1 minute to call. 1 minute to say, I'm thinking about you. How you doing? You don't get any extra credit for that. You're not going to be written up in any bichel that you did something. You're not going to get any. They're giving the school now to the girls these chesed points. You're not going to get anybody's to know about this chesed points. But what about to call your grandmother, to call your grandfather? What about something like that? Something simple and something small. The kids are. There are many crumbs, tiny little crumbs of Yiddishkeit. And these tiny pirurim, these tiny crumbs of Yiddishkeit, these tiny crumbs of Yiddishkeit are filled with kedusha. I don't know what that noise is. Could someone? Is that from here? Oh. These little crumbs, these little pirurim of Yiddishkeit that we don't think so much about. If we would think about them, and if we would stop and pay attention to the pirurim that we have, the opportunities that we have every day, we make a bracha shackle niya b'dvarim. There was a ma'aser from Rabbi Moshe Weinberger schus again aleinu, and there was a yid that came to see Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, and he came to the door. He was the next one in. And Moshe Weinberger was sitting with a glass of water, and he asked the Yid to wait a second. And Moshe Weinberger made a shackle. He made a shackle, and then the Yid came in. He asked him to come in, and he gave the krit and started talking about all of his sorrows. And Moshe Weinberger said, "Your father was a much greater person than you." And he said, "That's true, Rebbe, but why are you saying that?" He said, "Because your father would stand outside the door, and when I would make a shackle ni b'dvar, when he'd hear the words shackle ni b'dvar, that everything is from the Baruch Shalom, he wouldn't come in anymore and tell me his sorrows. He would be able to go home. He wouldn't have to come in with the krittel. He would leave. That was already good for him. Here you heard the shackle, and you still come in with the krittel. If we would stop and think what a shackle means, what it means to shackle ni b'dvar. See here, Rabbi Yisai, this is the klipa of Amalek. The klipa of Amalek and the shirish and the root of all of the kriris, all of the atzvus in our lives, is that we think that in order to impress the Rebbeinu Shalom, we have to come with aseres halaf and kika kesef. You have to come with the shkolim of Hamanei Rasha. You have to come with some big. You have to make a siyum, or you have a boy. This happens a lot of times. You have a boy who's living in yeshiva, and he becomes a younger man, and now he's a younger man. He's not able to learn so much anymore. And he has to go to work. And when he's at work, he's thinking all the time that he heard the shmuzins from the Rebbe to say that you have to become a baki in Shas. You have to know Ktsois and the Sivas, and you have to know all the Taisvus, and you have to know. And he's looking at himself, and he sees on himself that he spends most of the day working and all kinds of things, and then he has a little bit of a chance. He tries to a little bit some mishnayos, a little bit of a yankiv, maybe a daf yomi, to something to salvage from the day. And he remembers hearing shmuz after shmuz, that if you only learn a little bit, that you're nothing, you're nobody, you're worthless. Only somebody who is able to learn a lot, that person who's able to have a seres halaf and kika kesef, a lot, the shkolim from Haman, and you're able to weigh in. And only if you come with a davening that is boikeya rekiyim, that pierces the heavens. And only if it's a davening, who knows, it's an unbelievable davening. And that's the only thing that the Rebbe Shalom has nachas ruach from. And that's the only thing in life that's worthwhile. But a regular Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah, a regular Ashrei, a regular Yishtabach, a regular smile to a friend, a word of encouragement to a wife, to a child. To be able to, we have a lot in our neighborhood because everything is far away. It's not like here, you have things within, you can walk, but in our neighborhood, everything's with carpool. You have to drive the kids to, or you have to take the kids to yeshiva. Carpool. So would a person would a person ever think that this Indian of taking the children, to car, to yeshiva, that there's a big Indian? I remember seeing from one of the Svadish tzaddikim, Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, he died a few years ago, it was a big paisik. Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, he was walking in Yerushalayim past the bus, and the bus driver had his hand on the thing, and he was yelling at the boy, Schnell, 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 whatever, my hair, to get onto the bus. And he wasn't nice, the bus driver. And then he was a Svardish, and all of a sudden, he saw that Ben Sina Abba Shol was standing there. The Svardish have murdik their Cheretz for the Chachamim. And this bus driver stands up and he says, "Oh, Kvod Rav, Mashallah, Rav, Mashallah." And he was embarrassed because Ben Sina Abba Shol saw that he was yelling at the child, "My hair, man, no." So Rabbi Sina Abba Shol asked him. He says, "Yehudi Yakar, Tyri Yid." He says, "At Yodeh Ma Malacha Shalcha? Do you know what your malach is?" So he says, "I need a hag." What does it mean a hag? I'm a bus driver. He says, so Rabbi Sina Abba Shol said, "Ta'amin li." He says, "Believe me, when you're holding that thing, there's a mamash pticha, kamo pticha, shel aron kodesh. Psicha, mamash. It's the psicha of an aron kodesh. That when you're opening for a Jewish child the door of the bus, you should have in mind that you're opening up for a Sefer Torah the same when you're opening an Aron Kodesh." That's what Rabbi Sina Abba Shol said to him. Who thinks like that? A tzaddik thinks like that. That's why every moment of the tzaddik's life is big. Every moment of the tzaddik's life is big. Because when he looks at the little boy coming up the stairs and the Yid is standing over the handle, he sees that this is a psicha ne'ilah. A psicha by an Aron Kodesh. He's opening for a child to come into a bus. It's not stam. But when a person falls into that machshava of Haman, Vayom Haman belibai, and Vayom Haman belibai, I have a few more minutes. I'm not sure.
We're not going anywhere.
Vayom Haman belibai, that Haman said in his heart. The Sfarim tell us, because the Maggid Tzaddikim say, Vayom Haman belibai means that in every heart of a Jew there's a little bit of a Haman. Vayom Haman belibai. That there's this Haman that talks to the heart of a person, and he comes to be mavatel the pirurim. He doesn't wait till Erev Pesach, kol chamir v'chamir. He comes to make a bittul of all the pirurim of our lives. What are the pirurim? A little bit of Me'eh Shmei Rabbah, a little bit of a Rashi, a little bit of a Tosfos, a little bit of a Ben Lamachaveirai, a little bit you try today, this minute you try to work a little bit on this midah of kas. A little bit you pulled yourself up to go to daven 2 minutes earlier. Normally you come to davening a little bit late. Today, you don't know about tomorrow, whatever happened yesterday, but today, this crumb, this moment, this pirur of my life, I'm going to make it Purim-dik. I'm not going to let Haman come Belibi to tell me this is not worth anything. It's a machzah shekel. What's a half a shekel? Aseres halofim kika kesef. That's an accomplishment. For that, you get up early in the morning. But for your davening, you can stay in bed a little longer. For your davening, what's the verse for your davening? For your learning, if you would learn the way you learned in yeshiva when it was alumdus, and you were alamdin, and you were able to say over a svara, and everybody was impressed with your svara, that's called learning. But for you to get up into Mimav Sedra, and to look a little bit Chumash Rashi, and to try to ganva a minute that you have in between this and in between that, to look over a little bit of Rashi or Ramban on the parasha, that's a machzah shekel. What's that worth? That doesn't have any value. What has value? Aseres alaf and kika kesef. Big projects. What about tzedakah? What you're giving a little bit of tzedakah, what you could do, that's not going to build the yeshiva. The yeshiva can't open from your 50 cents, from your dollar. From that you can't open a yeshiva. Or you're giving to some tzedakah. What's that tzedakah? They're collecting prutas. Machsa shackle. Join our undertaking, our project. Our project is building Klal Yisrael. You ever hear these? Everybody's building up Klal Yisrael. This is the Lashon of Haman. Haman is always medaber, always showing medaber gedolos. Everything big lashonos. And what comes from all of that? That you're not machshav your machsa shackle. You lose your cheshik. You lose your cheshik for any little thing. It doesn't mean. What's the tachlis to say a kind word, to do this, to do that? I'm still no good. I still never became the aseres halofim kika kesef that I was supposed to become. I never became that. All I am is a machsa shackle. So because of that, the result is v'ata oyev v'yageya v'lo yirei elokim. V'ata oyev v'yageya. You lose your cheshik. From there, you're davening, you stop. You could take during this Marav tonight. This is the only time in your life you'll ever have Matzah Zayin Oder. The only Marav that'll ever be Tovshin Ayin Gimel. In your whole life is now. So you're not holding cup to say the whole Marav. Don't just say at least a Havis, say at least a Marav of him. Say 2-3 words. Give him Achsa Shackle to Bershel. He has a lot of honor from it. Doesn't have to be the whole Marav. Of Achsa Shackle you could do. A half a shackle. What happened by the Theta Egel, which is of course very tied up into Purim and everything? What happened by the Theta Egel? The same thing. For whatever reason, they made a mistake. Moshe Rabbeinu is not here anymore. They made a mistake. Right? The Sultan had a Maisa, and they made a mistake. And Moshe Rabbeinu is Ne'elam, is not here. So then there came such a machshava. If Moshe Rabbeinu is not here, then I can't be an Eved Hashem. I asked a Yid that comes from this neighborhood that I saw him in the summer, and he was acting in a way that was not becoming. And he saw me, then we were talking, and I asked him where he comes from, what's his, and he said that he remembers he was by Rabbi Yoelish, by the Satmar of Schusi Yelav Kol Yisrael. He was by Rabbi Yoelish. So and what's since Rabbi Yoelish? It's already quite a few years. He said since Rabbi Yoelish, that's what he said to me. Like this, he didn't even. I said, why is that? I said, you think that Rabbi Yoelish would be happy like that? Why did that happen to you since the Satmarov? He says to me this way, he says, well, since the Satmarov is nifter. Since the Rebbe was nifter, I don't see by anybody such thing. So he touched already up all the tzeddikim, which is itself a dangerous. I'm not even talking about what that means, that a person should talk like that. But besides that, this is his way of understanding. The Satmar of Shlusig, and it was a Seres Alof and Kika Kesef. Mask, top of the line. Can't get greater than that. The Satmar Rebbe. A Seres Alof and plus. And he looks at the Rebbe now down the block, or the Rav, whoever it is, that he says, nah, there's a Machsa Shackle from the Rebbe. That's not for me. That I can't grow from such a person. I can't become great from such a person. It's a Machsa Shackle. So where did the Theta Egel come from? If there's a Moshe Rabbeinu in the world, then I'm a Yid. Anything less than Moshe Rabbeinu, I can't do it. It's not for me. I need to have a Moshe Rabbeinu in my life. But if it's less than a Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm finished. This Rabbi Yisai is the shorish of Gehenim Shel Shelik, not with all the taivas. That comes afterwards, because it says in Pasuk, Avata Oyev Yageya, no, V'lo Yirei Elokim. V'lo Yirei Elokim. If you don't have a regular shachas with a bread, if you don't have a regular benoma chaveira with the simchas achayim, if you're dead, if you're not alive, if you've frozen over, if the lake has already become ice, then the tzlomim, the tzelom, the avodah zarah, the taivas, with all the other things, but the taivas, then it's just a little bit down the road, the taivas. You're ready, Amalek already got to you. Amalek doesn't go right away with this machine and that machine and this taiva and that taiva. The first thing that Amalek does is ashakarcha. There should be a krius in your life. You shouldn't feel the warmth of being a Jew. So how we must gather? And I think it's one of the things that you told me would be good is the importance of every day, positive every day, and positive thoughts, and the significance of bringing spirituality, ruchnius and Torah every day. And that's what we're talking about now. Zeh yitnu. The Baruch Shalom says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Zeh yitnu machsa shackle b'shackle HaKodesh. Rashi says, Her Eloi kimin matbei shel eish. Niskasha Moshe Rabbeinu was having a hard time understanding this Inyan. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him kimin matbei shel eish, a fiery coin. Machsa shackle, kimin matbei shel eish. Umishkola machsa shackle, that weighed a half a shekel. V'amar kazeh yitnu. And the Baruch Shalom told Moshe Rabbeinu, kazeh yitnu. Now you know the machsa shekel was used for carbon tzibur. Be'ikah, that means it was used for the carbon tamid, right? For the carbon tamid. What's the carbon tamid? It's a kever zecher tasa b'boy, kever zecher tasa b'naboy. That means tmidim kesidram. The machsa shekel was used not for any kind of a big carbon, not for the whole Sil Hashem and Sil Azazel. It wasn't used for the big carbonis of a yontiv, of a chagiga, of a shalmichet. It's a keves echatasa b'boike. It's a keves shachris. A borshem or an ashri yishtabach. It's a keves hasheni tasa ben harabayim. And the keves hasheni a regular mincha. A regular mincha. Tmidim kesidram. That's the ikka that the machsa shekel was being used for. And the Baruch Shalom says, Zeh yitnu. The Baruch Shalom says the secret of overcoming Amalek, the secret of overcoming that haman beliboy, the secret of overcoming that karirus, the coldness of ben olamokim lo chavero, the secret of that is to take a matbeya shel eish, the matbeya shel tefillah, of a regular shachas, a regular mincha, a regular marv, a regular benching, a regular bracha, to take that everyday event, a phone call to someone that would like to hear from you, a kind word, and so on. But to take that machsa shekel and to make it a machsa shekel that's on fire. And the only way that the machsa shekel could catch on fire is if you believe be'emunah shleima, that in the eyes of the Baruch Shalom, especially now, when we're by the Eikev of the Eikev, at the end of time, like we know from Nariya Kodesh B'Torah B'Chaim Vital, and we know from all the tzaddikim, that Bizmaneinu, any little bit, tiny little bit of any little bit of something that we can krechts out to give to the Bari Olam, was what by the Kadmoini would have been the biggest thing in the world. And the Nachas Ruach that we're able to be poiled now, with a little bit of a masa shekel of a matbeya shel eish. Kazeh yitnu, the Baruch Shalom says. What's the meaning of Zayin Order? I said last night, what's the meaning of Zayin Order? You see that Moshe Rabbeinu had many names. Moshe Rabbeinu had many names. Moshe Rabbeinu was Avigdor and Yekusiel and Chaver and Yared and Tuvia, Toiv. These are good names. You can't get a name like the name Tuvia, Toiv. It says when he was born, Toivu, Toiv. And yet when it comes to the Torah doesn't say Vayomer Hashem El Toiv, Leimer. It says Vayomer Shem Moshe Leimer. Vayomer Shem Moshe Leimer. So Chazal are bothered by that. He has nice names. Moshe has nicer names than Moshe. He has nicer names than Moshe. So why is it that the Baruch Shalom of all the names, the only name that we call him that he's known by in Torah is Moshe? Bo you reis charon shel goyim lech sodom. Shemekol shema shenikra ba Moshe Rabbeinu le nikra elu b'shem Moshe shekarosay basya baspara. Of all of the gewaldige names of Moshe Rabbeinu that have all kinds of deep meanings, all the Aseres Alaf Shekel, all of those names of Moshe Rabbeinu, Yekusiel, Avigdor, Toivia, all of those names, the Baruch Shalom says, I'll tell you, I have my favorite. And when the Baruch Shalom has a favorite, that's what comes out in Chumash. The Baruch Shalom says, my favorite name is Moshe. I'll tell you why. Because there was this girl, Bas Parai, the daughter of Parai. And everybody in her world was living a certain way. And she turned away from that, and she did something good. And she stretched out her arm to help her baby. So Chazal came and said, "Boy, you raise Charon shall goim lech Sodom. Shemul kol shemesh shenikra by Moshe Rabbeinu lenikra leb'shem Moshe shekarosa basya basparo." All of the names of Moshe Rabbeinu were big in Yonim, big in Yonim. The name Moshe is Kim Amayim Meshisu. That she took him out of the water. A chesed. Basya didn't think when that happened that she didn't think she was going to be written up like this. She didn't think this was going to become headlines, that we're going to be naming our children after her. She didn't think such a machshava. She just said it's the right thing to do, it's a good thing to do. It's a kleinigkeit, a machzah shackle, but I'm going to do it. But that's the name that he's called. The Rebbe says, I like that name. Moshe. So I like that name. When Yosef HaTzadik saw the Indian of Yaakov, saw the Indian of Esav Arosha, Yosef and Yaakov saw what Esav, the koiches of Esav, Yaakov saw, he was afraid, what's he going to do? How can he possibly overcome this? We're living in a time where we don't, B'derech HaTeva, based upon the things that they're coming out with every day, B'derech HaTeva, it's not possible to understand. How could it be that Yidden are going to survive, that the children are going to be able to grow up, not forget about being Ehrlich, that they should be normal. I remember when my son was becoming bar mitzvah, we were a little bit mishpacha with you remember the Debbetziner Rav, so I remember I was by the Debbetziner Rav, and I took my son Ushazaylik for a bracha. And he said to me, he said, "Otzvaksen so normal mensch." So I was a little bit hurt, you understand? I came a normal mensch. So I said, like I looked at him and I said, "A normal mensch." And he went like this. You ever seen him? He went like this. Kulei hai v'ulai. Kulei hai v'ulai. He said, "Halavai, he should be a normal mensch. If it'll be normal, maybe something will come from him." And I didn't think back then that was the biggest bracha. A normal mensch? It's a chiddush. We don't understand how is it possible nowadays you're talking about madregas, bal madregas, with what's going on, that you can't lift up your eyes and you think, no, I'm going to go to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim, they're walking around also. I see Jews, the 90-year-old Jews are walking around with the same thing. You go La'aleni, you can go to a Levi and you see the Oiris. By the Levi, you see people sit by a spaden. I was by a shiva this past summer, and there was sitting by the shiva, the Rav was saying Mishnayos. The guy sitting a foot in front of the Rav, and he's going like this on the machine. A foot in front of the Rav. You can't say that he was following inside the Mishnayos. That wasn't, even though probably it hasn't there. He wasn't following the Mishnayos. Right like this. He's not even embarrassed. I was by a pidyon at Ben. The boy, how many pidyon at Bens do you get to go to in your whole life? The grandfather of the boy. The grandfather of the boy was sitting, there was the pidyon at Ben. And not by the eating, by the pidyon at Ben. The grandfather was also with an old man. Was with a tchotchke doing all the, making all the. That's normal. If one of our grandfathers would come to the world, if they would come to the world, now do you see the way that we live in? The way that we walk in the street, talking, there's nobody even next to you. The way that we live, just to be a normal person. Kula hai v'ulai. How's it possible? How's it possible? So Yosef Yaakov was afraid. Yosef Atzadik, and the Baruch Shalom told him one nitzoitz, one spark of your fire, right? But Pasha V'Yeshev in Rashi, one little spark of the fire of what? Of Zayitman, of a machzah shackle, but a fire dik a machzah shackle can knock out the whole Esav, the whole Amalek. One thing. And now we understand why there's a fire from the Chidush Arivim. Chidush Mesuzlan says that shackle is the Rosh Tevis. Shackle is the Rosh Tevis. Shachbecha, Shivtecha, Kumecha, Lechtecha. That's the Rosh Tevis shackle. Shachbecha, Shivtecha, Kumecha, Lechtecha. Nothing fancy. Just the regular, everyday things of how a person lives. One of the greatest things, I'll tell you something from my wife, and she'd be embarrassed that I'm telling you. I'll tell you anyway. that a maisa that many years ago, we were living in Far Rockaway, and it's not such a nice, but what happened was that one of the babies made a terrible, terrible mess. It was terrible, all over the place. You know, it was the kind that when the father goes within 20 amas, he's ready. This is not for me. So my wife had to be Isaac in this thing. It was terrible. It went everywhere. And my wife was there, and it was, it's a mies. And I was in the next room, and I heard my wife, she didn't know that I was there, I heard her saying these words, Hareini Mekabelai Mrs. Say, Shalvi Ahavt Le'racha Kamayach. I heard her saying that. Afterwards, I asked her, I said, I heard you saying that. What were you saying? She said, it was so disgusting. She said, Moshe, I couldn't. It was like, it was just hard. And I didn't know what to do, so I was mechazing myself that this is also a Jew, my baby. It's interesting, no? It's also a Jew. So I haven't mekabel Mrs. Say Shalahat L'Recha Kamaycha.
I just want to share a little thing.
Please.
I'm working in a place that is physically and emotionally challenged adults. And sometimes you got to clean them. And the first time I was there, I just couldn't. I went into the room and I walked back out. I couldn't do it.
Yes.
And then I caught myself. I was trying to, and then I'm going to clean the and I went in there like nothing happened. Like I gave him lunch. There was no difference anymore.
Because the Machzah Shackle was became a Madbei Shalais.
It's a true story.
It was a Madbei Shalais because when you take that moment, and instead of allowing that moment to descend into the world of Haman, of Amalek, you stopped and you said, this is a Yid. And even if it wouldn't be Yid, it's a Niver B'Tzel. It's a human being. And I'm Baruch Hashem, I'm healthy. And you can make a l'shem yichud to say, I'm doing such a thing, to give nachas ruach, v'hi noim, Hashem look at the this moment of a machzah shekel, a person thinks about this, is the biggest, this crumb, is the biggest nachas ruach for the Bari Olam. And that's what Yismach Yisrael says, that by the mitzvah machzah shekel, Davka says, Vadal lo yamid. Hadal lo yamid. Hadal lo yamid. The Yismach Yisrael says that you shouldn't minimize the importance of a machzah shekel. Hadal lo yamid. When you had that moment in your life and you had to deal with that, and you looked like it was a disgusting, low thing, Yismach Yisrael says, the Torah comes and says, Hadal lo yamid. Just because it looks like it's a schlechter thing, it's a disgusting thing, lo yamid. Don't minimize the significance of this moment in your life. The Rebbe Shem opened up this moment in your life to do a taiva for somebody, to be goyim l'chesed, and it could be that bis 120, it's not going to be the big project. It's not going to be that you made the quadruple siyum on Bavli and Yerushalmi and the Mishnah Yomis and the Rambam Yomis, Netanya Yomi and everything. It's not going to be that. Who knows that after 120, that what's going to be the biggest thing is going to be you're the one that went in over there and you did that mice. I remember what you did over there, and that wasn't easy. Who knows? That's the Machzah Shekel b'Shekel HaKodesh. And that's why when Haman saw that Mordechai was Isaac and Hilchas Kmitza, you remember, also, and Haman said, oh, now I'm in trouble, because also, he says, also, when Haman asked, what are you learning? They said, learning the halachas of Kmitza. By the mincha, what's the Kmitza? A little bit. We're learning. So then Haman said, oh, your little handful of the mincha is stronger and is going to defeat, is going to win over. Listen to the words. That your Koimetz HaMincha is going to defeat my 10,000 shkolim. Your Koimetz HaMincha. And what's the Korban Mincha? Rabbi, you said the Korban Mincha is itself a Mincha Zani. For a poor man's Korban, a Koimetz HaMincha means Pirurim, not Purim and not Elim. Pirurim, crumbs. So now we understand, I'm finishing now, I'm sorry, I went over. Adel Yoda. The whole avodah of Purim is Adel Yoda. Because Adel Yoda means that there are so many things in our daily lives that we would never ever think. We think that, like that moment that our friend is talking about, that moment looked like it was an Orah Haman. It's an Orah Haman moment. I never would have thought that was Taka Baruch Mordechai. I thought that the biggest Baruch Mordechai was when I was saying Kriya Shema by Ne'ilah. And then by the Baruch Shalom, it's not like that. That was nice too. But you have a Machzeh Shekel, B'Shekel HaKodesh, a Matbeh Shel Eish. This Maisa is Ad Le'od. I never thought. I thought it was an Arham. The Baruch Shalom says, no. But you thought it was an Arham. By me, is a Baruch Mordechai. That Machzeh Shekel is a Machzeh Shekel, B'Shekel HaKodesh. The first Mishnah in Megillah begins, Megillah Nikkus, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, right? That's the first Mishnah in the Masechta. And we know there was a whole takana over there, that because why? Because the Bnei HaKfarim, they were bringing something, some food and drinks. So Chazal made a special takana, because a couple of Yidden that they're bringing drinks to other Jews. That's what the takana was. That they could be marked, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, the Gemara, the first line in the Gemara tells us. What to bring, to be Masbek, Rashi says that. To bring some water, to bring some food. And for that, Chazal make a whole takana. The Kriyas Megillah, you know, Kriyas Megillah, all the Oilimus, all the Malachim are shaking from Kriyas Megillah. And what? They make a takana. That in Megillah Nikkus, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel. Why? Because they're Yidden, and they're getting paid to bring these. That wasn't for free. They were getting paid, but they're coming with water and with food, and they're helping other people out. And Megillah Nikkus, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, the Chazal made a whole takana. Because of what? Because of such a thing. I want to end by sharing you something that changed my life. I'm not exaggerating. I don't know if some of the Chaver here from Shul, I read this by Yizka maybe 15 years ago. I want to share this with you. It's going to take maybe 6 minutes. I want to read to you some of the Lashonos. There was a Yid by the name of Jay Litvin. Anybody ever hear of him? Jay Litvin. He was a very talented writer. He was about tshuva. He was only zeiche to write. I saw myself maybe 7 or 8 essays, articles that he wrote. And he was nifter before he reached the age of 60. He from the machli he died. And somebody from the shul gave this to me. And it's called How a Stupid Little Ruler Saved My Life. You know what a ruler is? Saved my life. Just try to pay attention, because it's hard to listen when someone's reading. I didn't focus that for everybody, but listen. You can probably get this without pressing a buttons. Jay Litvin. He says like this. What does it mean to be indispensable? Binyamin, you heard this? No? What does it mean to be indispensable? You know what it means? Indispensable means that everybody, something that you can't do without. Indispensable. What does it mean to be indispensable? For most of my life, I've asked myself that question. Maybe not in those words exactly, but I've always had this feeling that there was some purpose to my life uniquely destined for me and me alone. I always felt that. Now, he says, I remember as a young man in my early 20s sitting under a tree. He was looking at the forest. He was in Woodstock, New York, during what some call the Woodstock years. It was a crazy time, that time. And that whole mice that happened over there, it was crazy. It was a symbol of those years. And they defined that period of time. I was in the 60s, Woodstock, and all the drugs and the sick and the crazy of the music and everything. And he was mishtatif in that. He wasn't from. Days of pondering life and destiny, of feeling free and unfettered, of infinite possibilities. He was sitting under the tree by Woodstock. I was young, single, and without children. Money was inconsequential. Either it was easy to acquire it, or it didn't matter much. And there I was sitting under this tree, wondering what it was all about, wondering why God put me on this here earth anyway, wondering what I was supposed to do with myself. So he says I wasn't religious at all, but I believed in some sort of in a God. And at that moment, he says, I was asking God. So I sat there thinking about this tree, and I began to envy it. I envied its lack of confusion. I envied it for not having an identity crisis. I'm sitting by a tree. I'm jealous of the tree. That the tree is not confused. The tree doesn't have to figure out what's its purpose. And I don't know what my purpose is. And so he says, I did what any young man in my position would do. I began a conversation with God. I began to talk to God. He said, I used to do this. I used to speak to God. And in my conversation, I did what I often do when I talk to God. I complained. I asked him why he would give this tree a life of purpose and leave me in the dark. I requested that I be given as much clarity as this tree about the purpose of my life. I told God that just like I was sitting here appreciating this tree, I too wanted to be appreciated. And I wanted that appreciation expressed to me in clear, simple terms. I think, if I remember correctly, that most of all, I just wanted to know why God put me here so that I could get on with doing whatever I was supposed to be doing to fulfill my purpose in life. And he goes on to say that God didn't answer me that day. I had no revelation. And years went by, lots of searching and seeking, and more conversations with God. Within these years, he goes on and says, you able to follow?
Yeah.
Within these years, I came close to Torah, discovered the teachings of Chassidus. He became a Lubavitcher, and certainly felt closer to having discovered my purpose than ever before. But to tell you the truth, I still didn't have that kind of crystal clear clarity of purpose that I had hoped for that day under the tree. Actually, it wasn't until one day during the months I was undergoing chemotherapy, that I had the moment of clarity I was looking for. And believe me, he says, during those chemo months, I wanted this clarity just about as much as I ever wanted anything in my life. It was vitally important during those days of weakness and fear to reach some understanding of what my purpose was on this earth, what I was sent here to accomplish, the turf of my indispensability, what made me indispensable. First, let me tell you that now I'm nearly 58 years old. I think he lived to be 59. I'm nearly 58 years old. I have a bunch of kids. Life has changed a lot since those under the tree Woodstock days, and I love every inch of every change. Among my 7 children is my little 8-year-old Dovi. He's the youngest. My oldest boy just got married. The other morning, little Dovi was having a crisis. He couldn't find a little ruler he used to do his geometry, his math. He couldn't find a little ruler. He was searching all over the house for it, and he was late for school. He was crying because he was having a test that day. And if he didn't bring this little ruler, not only would he fail the test, he wouldn't even be able to take it. He was facing what in his life would be considerable embarrassment and humiliation. I was about to leave for an appointment and was running late because of spending all this time helping Dobie look for his little ruler. But he was frantic and I just couldn't leave him. When finally, in defeat and tears, we decided that the ruler was a lost cause. I looked down at his sad little face and decided to drive him to school. He wouldn't have his ruler, but at least he wouldn't be so late. Hopefully I had enough time to drive him and still catch the train to get to my important appointment. We scurried down the stairs together, him still sniffling about what was going to happen at school, me rushing and hoping I wouldn't miss my train, but mainly feeling really bad for my sad little boy. We quickly got into the car, buckled our seatbelts, and just as I was about to reverse the car from the parking space, I stopped. I had this moment. I looked at my son, took a deep breath, and knew then and there that I was not going to make my train. I wasn't even going to try to make my appointment. Instead, I was going to drive straight to the closest store and buy him the little ruler he needed. And then I was going to take him to school, park the car, go inside, and talk to his teacher so he wouldn't get in trouble for being a little late. It was a crystal clear moment. And once the decision was made, I carried through these actions without any doubt nor hesitation. When I told my son of my decision, he smiled, squinted his little eyes in a sort of botched attempt at a wink, sat a bit straighter in his seat, and looked out the window at a world that had just gotten quite a bit brighter. However, shortly after buying the ruler, talking to the principal, leaving my son, and calling on my cell phone to postpone my appointment, doubts began to attack my certainty. He was going to get in trouble. He just missed his big appointment. Driving back home, I began to berate myself for my choice. How could I blow off an appointment just to buy my kid the stupid ruler he needed for his stupid weekly math test? By the time I pulled back into the parking lot in front of my house, I was in turmoil and just sat there for a while. And suddenly, from out of nowhere, I began to smile. And then my smile turned into a laugh. And then my laugh became a glow that emanated from my heart up to my head. That's where Amalek sits, in between, the Tanya says, in between Am Melech, Malika, in between here and here. And a smile, he says, I began to laugh, became a glow that emanated from my heart up to my head. I realized that I was in fact quite proud of myself for the choice I had made. And I did in this moment what any father in my position would do. I began a conversation with God. And I asked him, who needed me more at that moment? To whom was my presence and attention the most crucial? Who else would have gone and bought my son that ruler? Who would have even cared? Do you see, God, how much my children need me? And how they will need me for many years to come? Can you see, dear God, that I am the only father my children have? And that this is without a doubt the one area of my life where I am clearly and with certainty irreplaceable and indispensable? And as I continued this conversation, attempting to convince God of my absolute indispensability, requesting that on the merits of this indispensability, He cure my cancer, I had the feeling that this stupid little ruler was keeping me alive. From that day forward, a new awareness and a new prayer entered my life. I began to notice dozens of indispensable moments every day. And as I became aware of these moments, I would attach to them the same prayer. Please, God, can't you see how much my children need me? How important it is to keep me alive? Heal me. Heal me. This prayer would emerge whenever my children and I would share a smile or a goodbye kiss. When we sat and talked together about their life or problems at school. When I would tuck them in bed or cuddle with my boys under my talis during Birchas Kahanim. When we would sing at the Shabbos table or light Hanukkah candles. Or when I would go to their school and talk to the principal. These were moments that had occurred hundreds of times before. Pirurim, crumbs. Machsa shackle. Lots of them containing inconsequential things like lost little rulers and misplaced bobby pins, bruised feelings, moments of disappointment, a math problem solved. Only now they were crucial moments, each accompanied by my davening. Now they were escorted by an awareness of the absolute decisive role they were playing in my children's lives and in mine. These were moments I believe that were keeping me alive. In these prayers, though short and silent and barely discernible, I desperately tried to convince God of my indispensability. Like a lawyer, I plead my case, beseeching the Almighty, with the full intensity of my love for my children, that in His mercy, He allowed me to fulfill my purpose for many, many more years. For you see, I have become like a tree. And just as that tree, back in Woodstock, just as that tree once supported my back as I leaned against it, so do I now support my children as they lean against me. Just as the leaves shaded me from the bright, blistering sun, so do I provide protection and comfort to them in the midst of a world that sometimes threatens to burn their sensitive skins. And just as the tree's canopy allowed the earth to retain sufficient moisture to nurture the green grass beneath it, so do I nurture my children with the physical, emotional, and spiritual food they need for proper growth. My Woodstock prayer has finally been fulfilled. Mardi. Rabbi Sai, I don't think it needs any other explanation. The Baruch Shalom is bringing us to this week, to this time, and he's saying to us, Kinderlach, every little crumb of Yiddishkeit, make it a matbei shel eish. Think during the day, stop and think that shouldn't have to be Chalil like such a thing. How indispensable those moments are. How much Kivyachal Baruch Shalom Kivyachal needs these moments in our lives. And if we think about this, and if we daven, and we remember, then slowly we'll see the ice starting to melt, and the snow melts, and suddenly there's a warmth again. Husband, wife, parents, children, us with the Bari Olam. The Eibusher should bench each and every one of you and myself, all of us together. That we should be zeicher for that time where it should be. That everything will be warm again. It will be kemayim layam mechasim. The gula shav amitis. V'mhevi amen amen v'amen. Anigin.
Skoyach.